Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're looking at two quite distinct sources, but they're both zeroed in on the very same day, June 9th, 2025.
That's right. One is a forecast from Tarot by High C. It gives us the astrological outlook, kind of like a celestial weather report for that day.
Okay.
And the other, well, it's also from Tarot by High C, but it's a short fictional story called Signal Ghosts of Nueva Saito. And yeah, it's also set on June 9th.
Right. So our mission here really is to unpack what these two, very different viewpoints can tell us about this one specific day. We'll try to pull out the key insights from the star predictions and also from the story itself.
And see what connections pop up, right? If any surprising links emerge when we look at them side by side.
Exactly. So where should we start? Maybe the astrology.
Yeah, let's start there. The forecast for June 9th, it doesn't mince words. It signals right off the bat an undeniable intensity in the skies.
Intensity.
Yep.
Okay. That sounds significant. And is there general advice that comes with that?
There is. The main takeaway seems to be maybe avoid making huge decisions or having really important conversations on this day.
Why is that?
Because the forecast suggests perception could be pretty muddled, kind of unclear, makes it hard to really, get on the same page with others.
Ah, okay. So lean into flexibility instead. Trust your gut.
That's the advice. Yeah. Be open to surprises because they could definitely happen.
So what's causing this intensity? What are the planets doing?
Well, the forecast points to a few key things, especially some tight square aspects.
Squares. Those are the tense ones in astrology, right?
Yes.
Friction, challenges.
Exactly. Think tension and obstacles. So the first one mentioned is Mercury in Cancer.
Mercury, communication and thinking. Cancer, emotions, intuition. So together.
The source says this combo can create mental blocks or difficulties in communication.
Right. So you might feel kind of overwhelmed or like it's hard to move forward or get your point across clearly.
And the advice there is patience and discipline in your thinking and how you interact.
Okay, patience. Got it. What else?
Then there's a big one. Venus square Pluto.
Venus for relationships, values. Pluto for transformation, power. A square between them sounds potent.
It really is. The forecast says it intensifies relationships, brings power dynamics right out into the open.
So it could stir up maybe some deep stuff, like needing to say what you really want, even if it rocks the boat.
Yeah, exactly. A need to express desires freely, sort of without filtering based on what others might think. And the source suggests, connections could deepen because of this. But it might also force you to look at unhealthy attachments. That intensity can go either way.
Makes sense. And there was another square mentioned.
Yes, Mercury square Neptune. We already talked Mercury communication. Neptune is often about, dreams, illusion, sometimes confusion.
So Mercury squaring Neptune, communication hitting illusion, sounds foggy.
That's exactly how the forecast describes it. It can really blur the lines between what's real and what's, imagined or just perceived, like trying to think through a fog.
Wow. Okay, so miscommunications, misperceptions seem almost guaranteed then.
Highly likely, yeah. Getting on the same wavelength with someone else could be a real challenge.
All right.
And that leads to some strong advice in the forecast. Maybe don't have those really meaningful discussions. Definitely don't sign critical documents.
Because you might be missing something important.
Precisely. You're likely missing key information. The recommendation is basically wait. Wait for the fog to clear before you decide anything major.
The forecast also mentioned Mercury square Saturn, didn't it?
It did. Saturn brings structure, discipline, but also limitations, obstacles sometimes.
So Mercury communication, hitting Saturn's obstacles.
Right. The source calls this combo heavy thoughts. It suggests potential obstacles, maybe delays in things. Mercury governs communication, sure, but also transport technology.
Okay, so getting information, getting around, it might just feel harder or slower.
That's the idea. And the mood probably isn't going to be very lighthearted. There's also this interesting bit about the peanut gallery. Outside opinions or maybe your own inner critic being potentially unhelpful or even kind of hostile.
So just generally a heavier vibe for communication and tech stuff.
Pretty much. So if you put all that astrology together, June 9th looks like a day with, undeniable intensity, marked by communication hurdles, potential misunderstandings, deep emotions bubbling up, maybe friction in relationships.
And the main advice is be careful. Be patient.
Proceed with caution and patience. That sums it up well.
Okay, so that's the celestial weather forecast.
Yeah.
Now let's pivot completely. Let's dive into this short story, Signal Ghosts of Nueva Saito. It's fiction, but set on the same day, June 9th.
Right. And the setting itself just immediately grabs you. Nueva Saito.
Mm.
The sky is the color of a dead screen.
Yeah.
There's this hum of soft static, like perpetual digital rainfall.
Wow, vivid imagery.
Yeah.
Sounds oppressive.
Definitely. The atmosphere described is thick with suspicion. A kind of communal paranoia is mentioned.
And that comes from knowing that messages just don't travel clean in this world, right? They get distorted, changed, maybe don't arrive at all.
Exactly. Information is like currency, but it's all broken pieces, unreliable fragments. People trade names and code fragments they don't even understand, but they desperately want them.
It sounds like a tough place to live. And we meet a character, Kellen Viereck.
Yeah, Kellen. The story tells us he hasn't slept in 30 hours, and not because he has to be awake, but because sleeping feels vulnerable.
That says a lot about the world he's in.
It does. He finds himself in this gridline cafe, which is described as a place where comlink frequencies went to die, sort of off the digital map.
A dead zone.
Kind of. And the details really paint the picture.
Right.
Wall screens flickering with garbled news feeds. You hear politicians promising order, corporations promising escape. But the city itself feels like it's whispering lies. It just screams distorted signals, false leads everywhere.
That communal paranoia makes sense then. And in this quiet spot, he meets someone named Isra.
Right, Isra. Her eyes are described as glittering like hacked quartz. She's someone who deals in truth fragments, data leaks, half-seen patterns, finds meaning where others see noise.
And she's been through it. The story mentions neural scarring.
Yeah, from backdoor dives into ghost systems. It sounds like she's paid a price for digging into hidden or dead networks. Kellen seems to value her because she can somehow make sense of the senseless in this information chaos.
And their meeting is tense. She asked him if he brought it.
Right. Straight to business. And it is this pulse drive. Looks like nothing special, the story says.
But the contents.
Oh, yeah. Explosive. The list includes blackmail schemes, personal confessions, public lies, basically the secrets of the powerful people, the 1,000 invisible hands pulling the city's strings.
Wow. That's heavy. The story mentions heavy knowledge. Consequences encoded in every byte.
It does. And Isra's reaction when she sees it, it's described as a sharp, hungry smile. Kellen sees the city's reflection in her look. A predator pretending to be a friend.
Chilling. It also says obsession masquerading as loyalty, possession disguised as trust.
This isn't a warm reunion.
Not at all. And she lays out his options starkly. You could sell this or burn it or let it drown you. Heavy choices. Does he hesitate?
He does. The story describes his hand hovering over the drive. He sees neon reflections from a passing drone. And he thinks about how in this city, every message is encrypted, not just with code, but with meaning.
How every truth was a weapon, every connection a trap. The paranoia is baked in deep.
Deeply. And then he makes his move, slides the drive to Isra,
And says,
let's see what the ghosts of this city have to say. Loaded words.
what happens then?
The story describes an immediate ripple effect. Screens flicker wildly. It feels like the network caught its breath. And reality itself shimmered like something half remembered and half invented.
Whoa. Like the very fabric of reality is unstable there.
Exactly, and that's the feeling. And the story ends on this really stark note. The truth was never simple, and tonight it was about to bleed.
Okay, so the story gives us this really dark, high-stakes picture of navigating a world drowning in distorted information, paranoia, where truth is dangerous, connections are traps, and reality itself feels, well, shaky.
A world where just pursuing knowledge, these truth fragments, is incredibly risky.
Right. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Like you said earlier, we have the astrology for June 9th, 2025, and this story set on June 9th, 2025, putting them together.
The overlap is pretty amazing, isn't it? It's almost like the astrological weather is describing the conditions inside Nueva Saito.
It really feels that way. Remember the astrology warning about muddled and unclear perception? Difficulty getting on the same page?
And Mercury square Neptune blurring reality and illusion.
That sounds exactly like the story's world. The garbled news feeds, the distorted signals, the communal paranoia because you can't trust messages.
And that ending. Reality shimmered like something half remembered and half invented.
Yeah, both sources are pointing to this fundamental challenge on this day. Figuring out what's real, what's clear communication. It seems incredibly difficult in both contexts.
And then think about the other astrological themes. That intensity, the exposed power dynamics, the darkest feelings and desires stirred up by Venus square Pluto.
Right, the suspicion, the potential for hard truths dropping.
How does that map onto the story? Pretty directly, I think. The city itself acting like a predator pretending to be a friend. Those descriptions of Isra's look, obsession masquerading as loyalty, possession disguised as trust.
And the pulse drive itself, full of blackmail, lies.
Yeah,
It's literally the currency of hidden power and secrets that could blow relationships apart.
exactly. It embodies that Venus-Pluto tension.
And what about the Mercury-Saturn square? The heavy thoughts, the obstacles in communication and tech, the mood not being lighthearted?
You definitely feel that in Nueva Saito, don't you? That dead screen sky, the cafe where communication signals go to die.
Yeah, the whole atmosphere is grim, heavy, and the information Kellen carries, that pulse drive, it's a massive, dangerous burden. Nothing lighthearted about it.
It's just a fascinating pattern. You've got the astrology laying out this energetic blueprint, intense, confusing, challenging, emotionally charged.
And then the story comes along and paints this incredibly vivid picture of what it might actually feel like to live through a day with those exact energies swirling around you.
Yeah, whether it's metaphorical weather or something else, the resonance between the two sources for the same date is just really striking.
It really is, makes you wonder. But just looking at the sources themselves, the alignment is hard to ignore.
So let's recap this deep dive. We started with the specific astrological warnings for June 9th, 2025, all that intensity, the communication challenges, the emotional depth, the relationship friction, the advice for caution.
And then we plunged into Nueva Saito, into the signal ghosts story, feeling that atmosphere of paranoia, the distorted reality, the dangerous weight of hidden truths.
We saw how the day's celestial forecast urged caution, focus on potential misunderstandings, and acknowledge deep emotional currents.
And how the story vividly portrayed a world where reality feels warped, power hides in secrets, and truth is a weapon.
Both sources, really, in their own language, describe a day where clear sight and trusted connections are incredibly hard to find.
Which kind of leads to a final thought, building off that powerful ending in the story. If reality itself can feel, half remembered and half invented when the signals are crossed and truth is weaponized, how do you navigate that? How do you decide what's real and who you can actually trust in a world just overloaded with information?